We're honored to be hosting this Culture of Health Forum in cooperation with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We welcome you to the Barnabas Health Behavioral Health Center and thank you for joining us today.
Hurricane Sandy presented a very challenging and daunting task to cover, but living through it is a totally different story.
We're in New Jersey, we're part of New Jersey. And when the storm was coming, we knew that we had a role to play. And most immediately, we began to provide resources to the American Red Cross, and Carol Chain's there from the American Red Cross, and then subsequently to provide immediate resources for the food pantry, because we knew that those were going to be resources that were challenged. But we've also done work in areas like after Hurricane Katrina. And we knew from our own experience in the grant making we did there that weeks and months after the disaster hits, people forget about it. They stop writing the checks to the American Red Cross, they stop giving to other charities. And that we could play a role, not immediately, although we did, but our biggest role could be after the storm, when others stop giving. Health services are so important that the impact of the storm will live on for years. And so we as a foundation geared our fundraising to focus in later in the storm and in a consistent manner. And the mental health services are so critical for people to get back where they were.
The need is so much greater now because right after the storm, there was hope. There was hope for healing, which was our tagline for a long time. And the hope was things will get better. That FEMA is there, insurance is there, people are rallying around, food is coming in, community and neighbors are helping one another. So it was a very hopeful time. The reality now is that a lot of the delivery hasn't happened for people.
The immediate survival needs and the immediate effects of the trauma have given way to a longer term, just overwhelmed sadness and anxiousness, following a normal curve of reactions to an abnormal situation. It was, a lot of people were very quick to call this PTSD. People were quick to call this, to pathologize these reactions, but these are all normal. Having trouble sleeping, having trouble concentrating.
In fact, as our counselors got out there, particularly in Atlantic and Ocean counties, initially, and I learned this from our Ocean County director, they would reach to mayors and they would reach to various agencies and say, we'd like to come and talk with and explain to you about the mental health needs, even now, because people are in shock, they're in crisis. And the response was, this isn't a mental health issue. This doesn't have to do with mental health. A year later, they've been on the ground, everybody has been door to door, all kinds of wonderful, creative ways of doing community organizing. And those mayors and those agency people are now knocking on our door and saying, please come and speak, because they understand this isn't about crazy, this isn't about serious mental illness, this is about an emotional response to something that's extremely, extremely distressing. So we came up with several gaps that we saw. We needed a way to monitor how the services were being delivered, what was working and what wasn't. That's part of our grant. We're going to be monitoring along with the Rutgers School of Social Work. They're doing the data applications and the data surveys for us. That's one piece. The second piece is called mental health first aid, and I would bet that most of the people in this room have also been exposed to that and know about it. But we saw it as an opportunity for people everywhere, for the public to begin understanding that mental health and emotional distress are things that we can all intervene in, just like we do with first aid. People volunteer all the time to go in and get trained in what to do if they see someone fall to the ground or they see someone really upset physically. Doesn't happen when they see someone behaving strangely. We're afraid, we don't know quite what to do, how to do it.
That we need to stress that this is not about mental illness. This is about having a normal response. The depression, the sadness, the anger is normal when you're dealing with these kind of horrific tragedies. So that the person experiencing that is not having a mental health breakdown, is not mentally ill, but that their emotions are within the norm of dealing with a tragic event.
A lot of people used us for companionship because they didn't have anybody. They didn't have anybody to rely on. And I think out of all of the messaging and all of the information that we provided, the first message was, we're going to get through this together.
Cleaning up the streets, you know, the town can do that. Our Department of Public Works can do that. Can we provide safety and security? We can do that. Can we provide mental health assistance? No.
Why not?
We don't have the resources.
Well, because in any disaster, there's a norm, there's a pattern that people follow following the disaster. You know, shock, dismay, then, oh my goodness, I got to get back and rebuild.
Stages of, you don't see it here.
I see it exacerbated here in a sense that it has been an unprecedented confluence of things that came together.
Okay, so let's pretend it was me.
Go ahead.
Where am I going to get the money to raise my home? And where am I going to live while my home is being raised? How do I know that the forms that I filled out and the funds that are supposed to come to me are coming to me? How do I know how high I'm supposed to raise my house if the back of my house is in an A zone and the front of my house is in a V zone? Where will my kids go to school? What do I do? We all live together in the house now, and there's stress, and I don't have the money.
And those unanswered questions create a lot of stress.
Well, it's the frustration level, and frustration is directly related to anxiety and then causes depressive symptoms.
Because it's just like a broken leg. It's something that can be fixed and that you should get help from. And that's really part of some of the beauty of what the Mental Health Association of New Jersey is doing with this program. Because, you know, it's really hard to go to a stranger to do that. But if you go back to that story about that mail delivery person,
Right.
they're coming to the door on a regular basis, and they just say, something isn't right. So, Mrs. Jones, you know, I don't know how to treat this, but I know that something's not right, and here's where you can go for help.
And so we have people out there who still have not been able to get back to their homes. They're paying their mortgages now, and they lose their rental subsidies. And I think that that is going to add another level of stress for our families that we need to be cognizant of. And we need to be prepared to respond to them and to give them some resources.
Now, a year later, there are different needs. And that's the reason why it's very important, not only for our philanthropy and our commitment, which we have and which will be ongoing, but for other philanthropies to really step up and say, there's still need here in New Jersey, and there will be for years, because the problems change over time. Recovery, you know, a storm happens 24 hours later, it's over. The recovery goes on for years.
You talked about being strong as New Jersey. What I keep seeing, what makes us strong, is when we see a problem we can fix. You see a boardwalk broken, we can fix it. We see a house that's broken, we can fix it, even if we have to raise it up 50 feet to do it. What we're doing today in helping people see where people are broken, it's hard to see into somebody's mind. I think this forum, at least for me, when the grant ended up being one of those things that they asked us to write, and I said, people need something, people need help. So that became a whole learning process. I'm not a mental health professional. I may need mental health services by the time this whole process is done. But just a pastor on the ground seeing people who need help has been a big leap forward in what I can do as a pastor and what just a community organization can do to help other people.
You know, we used to say there's physical health and there's mental health. There's clear evidence showing that those two are intertwined, that we can actually measure the changes that go on in the brain with illness, but also to exposure. Just simple things like stress. You can begin to see the brain change. You can actually see how the genome is expressed, how your genes are expressed. So if we recognize that these two are so intertwined, then our system has to recognize that there is no physical illness that doesn't have a mental component.
Right.
And mental illness always has a physical component. And we're talking about wellness. And we want people to be able to see that if they make these simple steps of just reaching out, that they can achieve that state of wellness and to be happy with their lives. And so the story that really needs to break is about how somebody did it,
That's the news.
and they got better.
That's the
because then
news.
someone else says, you know, I'm glad to know it's not just me.
That's right.
It's anybody who's been exposed. And if they reached out and they got help and they're better, then I should reach out and I'll be better.